Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. This is one of the ones I previewed before, and I guess when I previewed it I made an error. I've been corrected. This is a ABU Garcia 5600 C4, and it is made in Sweden. I think maybe at the time, because I didn't see it quickly, I said that this was one made in China. That's not the case. And what we have is an intermittent problem with the free spool release. Sometimes it takes a little bit extra, and most of the time that I find out it's either lack of lubrication or it's dirt, and it's usually a fairly simple fix. But we're going to take this reel apart completely. We're going to tune it up, make sure it gets its right amount of oil and lube, and then we'll get it back out there fishing again. So I'm going to start, as I always do, by removing the exterior pieces. And as I do that, I want to thank the first responders, essential personnel, law enforcement, and everybody who's helping keep us safe during the pandemic. It really is appreciated, all of your efforts, and you putting your life on the line literally every day. It's important for us to try and do our part as you do your part, and I want to thank you personally for everything you're doing to keep us well. I'm just noticing that the handle's pretty loose. That usually means that you can probably just untighten this. And there's a little hole down on that, but you can usually tighten it another turn or two before you really have to worry about stripping anything out. There's a C-clip here, or an E-clip. I always call them the wrong thing. But that holds on the axle shaft and handle, and you got to take that off in order to remove the handle and the rest of the assembly. So go ahead and take it off now. Just be careful, it's a spring clip, it will shoot. Then you can easily remove that. You can back off the tension adjuster. It's in a counterclockwise direction. Now if you're working on a left-handed reel, understand everything else goes the opposite direction there. And then once you do that, you can come over to our side plate here. That's held down by 3 screws. So let's go ahead and take them out. And speaking of taking, while you're taking the reel apart, take pictures. Now I'm doing that with a video camera. You don't need to take the video, but what you should do is use a digital camera, your cell phone, or take the video if you like. And just make sure that you have pictures along the way at critical junctures, so that as you go to reinstall, if you get stuck, you can go back and reference your pictures. And I want to make sure that you don't get stuck, but if you do, in the comments section, send me a note, whether it's on this reel or another reel that you happen to be stuck on. I'll try and get you unstuck. How's that? So comments are good like that. Share any kind of information. Somebody shared with me that I had this wrong with the country manufacturer, and more than happy to be corrected on that. And use that comment section for any kind of communications you like. I also mentioned, as I do these reel repairs, that these do come in from the mail, and if you're interested in a reel repair, you can connect with me through my business card. Please use my email. That's the most efficient way to do this, and that'll help you and help me keep track of all of this stuff. Alright, there's 2 tension pieces on the outside. These are for the flexibility or the sensitivity on that tension washer. And just as I thought, we're kind of loaded up with all kinds of dirt and sand and the like, so even though this had a pretty exterior, the interior, well, it needs some work, right? So we've got the main gear that came off because we took that clip off. We're just going to go ahead and clean this up, and I suspect that why we're having a little bit of a trip problem is that there's a lot of salt and sand and residual buildup. You can see it up here, and that's, I'm sure, what's causing this to kind of be a little bit punky in its response. So we'll work to get that out as well. Kind of surprised that that one nut came out as good as it did. Alright, I'm just going to flush this with a WD-40 type of a product here. It's not WD-40, it happens to be Ace's Lube, but it's a penetrating oil, and that helps to dissolve some of the salts, and it's going to help me clean up this reel. So I'm going to shoot that up with the penetrating oil, and then I'm going to grab a cotton swab and just try and take out all of that dirt and junk from behind. And then I'm going to also use a paper towel to kind of mop it up, because whether it's liquefied or solid, you don't want that stuff laying around in your reel. But that, as you can see, that does a nice job of cleaning it up. And dirt is the enemy of your reel. That's what you want to do to get that fixed. Alright, we have that. We have our gear set, which we're going to work on in a moment. Notice that there's a little copper washer. Don't lose that one. That belongs on your gear shaft, on your bridge shaft. And then the rest of this we can take a look at and see how we're doing with the main gear in a moment. We want to get this off. This is your yoke spring assembly, and this is fairly common of the newer models. There's it sits on the posts, and you should just be able to work that up. And I know that I saw a bunch of stuff on this side, so it may be a little bit more difficult to get it off here, but it should come off. Put a little bit of spray on there. So a lot of folks ask, how frequently should they tune up their reels? And I think this is kind of the answer, right? If you do it on an annual basis, typically you're not going to get stuck, literally stuck, in a situation like this. I just used a plier, a small bladed screwdriver, just worked it in behind where it was sticky. And I like to take this up as much by hand as I can. There you go, we're pulled off. And I think we can see what's going on here now. We can see that we've got an awful lot of dirt and like exactly where that free throw should go, right? So we've got that off. We're going to take our yoke assembly off. And then this one is just simply on a lever here. Again, take pictures here. This is a good one. If you don't know what you're doing, take pictures. I'm going to lay that out. And that'll also tell you the orientation of this piece. And now you can get behind there and you get rid of all of that stuff. I guess stuff is a technical term, but we can see that there's a lot of sand, and I'm saying sand, it can just be dirt. I'm not quite sure where this has been used, but that's the cause of the poor performance here. And so we want to do is our best job we can in terms of getting this clean. Some people use a toothbrush. I like the cotton swab and paper towel approach. Whatever works for you. That's kind of the best I can give you in terms of that. I'm just showing you how I do it. It doesn't mean that it's the only way to do it, for sure. It is a way to do it, and if you have a different way and it works for you, go for it. And I just want to pay particular attention. It looks like some of this is actually worn off the metal. That's I'm just going to grab a little file here just to show you. There's some ridge here actually because of the corrosion on this plate, but nothing too terrible. Okay, let's go to reinstall, and what I just did is I removed the side plate. The back was kind of sticky, that's why it didn't come off initially. Just did it now. I wanted to make sure we got all that grease and gunk and contaminants off of that. I've also put a little bit of grease onto the face here where these pieces are going to go now. So we're going to start by putting our little throw assembly. You'll notice there's a slot here. That's actually where the back button from the free spool release is going to come through. You want to make sure that that works. Then this goes up like that. Then we can put our yoke assembly on. And when you're putting your yoke assembly on, make sure you grease this up, the gear, and make sure when you put the gear on that the cross hatching of the spool gear faces out, or pinion gear faces out. And you can just simply line it up like that, and that's what's going to trip the our assembly. And you'll notice that it'll come back in and it'll move out, and that's how you're going to raise or lower your yoke to disengage or engage that spool. Alright, when you have that on, then notice that we have a little spring here. That little spring is going to kind of act as a return spring for this lever here. So make sure that when you go to install, this is up. And now we have 3 points that we're going to be working on. We want to get one on there and one on here. I'm going to push those down for a moment. There we go. And when you snap it in, that's what you have. Now we'll have the two, there'll be a stud and there'll be a screw coming through here. But that's the how you install the yoke spring on top of the yoke, and that's the carrier. And make sure on this side, as I pointed out earlier, that this little return spring here has got that lever on top of it. It's easy to trap it behind it, it's easier to trap it below. You will not work it that way if that's the case. I'm going to pull the spool out at this point. I'm going to check behind. We have a plastic idler gear. I want to make sure all of the teeth are working in there. I want to check both sides of it. You can put a drop of oil on that, but you do not need to put any grease on there, because the nature of this is it's a petrochemical product. You can put grease where that spool is going to land in the back there. And a little bit more in there. And then what I like to do before I go any further and rebuild is I like to make sure that I can reinstall that plate on this carrier assembly here on the frame after it's cleaned up. And again, you can see that there's a good amount of dirt inside the frame here. So that's what was causing that intermittent failure with the return of the free spool lever, the arm. Alright, so that takes care of that. The back end you don't do anything with. The front end has a bearing. So again, we can put a couple of drops of oil. And today I'm using Penn Precision Real Oil. Sometimes I'll use Real X, it doesn't matter. These are the brakes, and you need to make sure that those spool brakes fit inside here, because if you don't, you're going to trap it, and if you trap that, it won't work properly. Alright, I'll just slide this in. Those of you that watch me know I have a darn little penchant for getting this line stuck inside the case, and this looks like it's a perfect setup to do that again. I don't generally like working on line on an annual tune-up. What I like to do is replace the line at the same time, but that's on my reels, and this is not my reel. Okay, now we want to make sure that we can get this arm through that slot there as we merge in the plate, and we want to make sure all of our brakes are in. And one more thing, we want to put a little bit of grease onto the shaft that's going to go through the pinion gear. Alright, we're on, and here's what I was talking about before. You need to make sure that the arm on the bar on this arm is through that hole and rests on top of that little lever there. I'm not sure how easily or difficult that is to see, but that's what we want to do. And we'll pay our attention to the main gear. We have, looks like Carbon-Tex washers, so we're not going to do anything with Carbon-Tex. If you read the packages on Carbon-Tex, they tell you you can use a drag grease, but you don't need to use a drag grease. That's because they're not very porous. If they were porous, you would want to use a drag grease to maintain the flexibility in them, just so that they don't dry out and perform poorly. But if you got Carbon-Tex, it's your option, and in this case, we're going to exercise the no option on that. Okay, make sure you have that little copper washer below. We can put that on the post now, and then we can build up. So you have a round washer, which is called a keyed washer. If you look inside, it's got 2 flat spaces. Next washer up. Then we have what's called an eared washer, and there's 2 slots in the main gear where that goes. It's got a round section in the middle. This is our last of the washers, and then we have what's called a cap washer, or a bell washer. It's a couple of different things, and that's because there's a ridge on this one, and that kind of completes the this side of the deal. So what we want to do now is we're clean on this side. I'm going to just push that ferrule through. Just make sure that the anti-reverse bearing or clutch is in good condition. Put a little bit of oil in there. I also want to make sure that the ferrule that rides on that clutch is clean of debris, and this seems fine. We can go ahead and put that back on, and then we can reload our case, which we cleaned previously. Oops. Just checking. Yep, everything. I use a parts tray. I just want to make sure that all of the pieces and parts that are in here belong on the exterior. They do. So now you want to line these 2 case screws with the pieces here, just like that. And my parts tray tells me that that's where I should find my screws for this. And I like to get that bridge assembly set before I do the exterior pieces into the frame. And I apologize if you can't see this. Sometimes my hands are too big for the frame of the video. There we go, we'll try and do it that way. We'll get these in. So if you like this, I'd ask you to subscribe so that you can see the videos that I post, and I've been trying to post frequently, so if you hit that notifications button, you won't miss when I go about posting a new video. And I've been trying to post those on a regular basis, kind of as an homage to our frontline workers and our healthcare workers who are out there every day doing it. I'm trying to do this every day, kind of to keep everybody kind of entertained and take our minds off of this horrible pandemic. And I would ask you to please do everything in your power and your part to make sure that you're taking the appropriate precautions to stay well. All right, there's those 2 concave washers. I like to put them face to face. And again, they can be changed up depending on the sensitivity of the tensioner knob that you like. There we go. And we can get a little bit of dirt on that. We can put the tensioner knob on. Now this is spinning, so I got a couple of different things I can do when it spins. I like to work those down by hand, but one of the easiest things for me to do is just take a small pliers and just hold the bottom of the shaft like that until I can see the top come through. Grab the top momentarily, and then once you get it through enough, use your handle as the hold down. Just remember that little piece there. Alright, we're down and tight there. And we have that little tension washer that goes between the handle and the adjuster. Then our handle goes on, and then our friend, that little E-clip, goes on. And sometimes you can get this E-clip on by hand strength, and sometimes you can't. I haven't been very lucky of late getting it on by hand. That's probably just because of my strength. Your hand may be a little bit stronger. If that's the case, you can pretty much grab it and pull it in. See how I do here? Well, I got lucky. I was able to get that in. Once you do that, then you can put your handle nut cap back on. This time I'm going to make sure that this one is set. The 10mm nut there. This was a little bit loose coming on, so I'm not quite sure why that was, but it was. And generally speaking, if you can get the flat end lined up with the hole, you can get this piece back on without having to adjust. And we're just off slightly. This is trial and error. Just a bit. Now when you're putting your handle on, make sure that your drag adjuster is all the way down, because you could get a false tight, and maybe that's what actually happened, why this nut was loose to begin with. Maybe the last time it was off, and we know it's off because it has the carbon tex in it. Maybe the last time that handle adjuster was all the way up. They tightened it down and pressed against that adjuster. And what happened was it didn't give you enough room in terms of the reel itself. All right, let's give it a spin. I want to do one more thing, and then we'll give it the final test. I want to take this pawl cap off. So notice I pulled it off to one side. I want to get a drop of oil in there. It's going to help it spin freely as it comes around, and that pawl has to turn. Go ahead and put that cap back on. This is always an adventure. If you have small fingers, you can probably get it in here a lot easier than I can. There we go. And just be careful as you're going in. Don't over tighten this. You can crack that cap. Oh, there you go. That's running a lot smoother. I'll just put a little bit of oil onto the worm gear as well, just for fun. All right, let's make sure that the problem it came in for is solved. The problem that we had was that this free spool release was intermittent. Let's go right back in the way it should right now. Half a crank and boom, we're right back up there. We can do this all day because we got all that dirt and grease and junk and grime out of there. So that's it. That's your ABU Garcia 5600 C4, proudly made in Sweden. Yes, I've been corrected, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a Swedish-made Ambassador. So let's finish this up then. Again, I appreciate everything that everybody does in support of my channel. I ask everybody to please stay safe and stay well. And again, if you're a first responder or an essential line personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do. So with that, let's give this reel back to John, give it a second chance, and let it go fishing again. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.